Hello, friends. It is Monday, and Monday means we are ready for a new chapter in When Christians Were Jews by Paula Fredriksen. I hope you are enjoying the text so far. Just to introduce chapter 3 this week, we are going to be spending a lot of time thinking about the resurrection and thinking about the resurrection through a couple of different lenses. So one of the things that Fredriksen is helping to develop here for us readers is to think about these kind of blocks or chunks of text that maybe represent the traditions from which they come, and then to examine to what extent do those chunks of text represent the thoughts, feelings, actions, and beliefs of the early Jesus movement. And so, for example, we have the Pauline epistles, and we have the gospel accounts. And within the gospel accounts, we've got the synoptic gospels that go together, the Johannine gospel doing something slightly differently. As we think about the gospel according to Luke, we see that there's really a 2-volume set here, which is Luke and Acts, or the Acts of the Apostles. So Luke Acts was one big thing originally, but it was so long that it took 2 scrolls to write, and so that 2-volume set really became canonized as sort of like 2 different things, one in the Gospels and one about the Acts of the Apostles. But in the scholarship that I've read, we can treat Luke Acts like one kind of complete set in 2 volumes. Now, what's interesting is that Luke Acts, in particular Acts, is reporting on the activities of Paul, but those activities do not always cohere with how Paul himself reported his activities. And so you kind of get like a Lucan account of Paul, and then you get Paul's account of Paul. So that's interesting. It's interesting to think about the things that Paul, writing decades before the Gospels, what that preserves from the Jesus movement and what appears in the Pauline epistles that are seemingly absent from the Gospel accounts, and likewise the other way. Things that appear in the gospel accounts that are absent in Paul. So, for example, as we think about the resurrection here, Fredriksen will observe that any story of Judas or betrayal or handing over peridotomy in the Greek, I do not speak Greek, so I never know if I'm pronouncing things properly. Rather than betrayal, it's really about handing over is the Greek that lies beneath the turning over, the handing over, the betrayal of Judas. At any rate, that entire story is absent from the way that Paul reconstructs death and resurrection. What resurrection means for Paul means something slightly different for the gospel accounts. And there's an interesting discussion that Fredriksen takes on about what is the substance of the resurrected Jesus. So for Paul, in Pauline scholarship, and I wanted to just show you this book that I'm reading right now. This is from a Talmudic scholar named Daniel Boyrin. The name of this book is A Radical Jew. This is Boyrin's work on Paul. I love Daniel Boyrin. I think I love him especially because he is a Jewish man, talks about his Jewishness, but writes about the gospel accounts through that perspective. In fact, he has a book that's called The Jewish Gospels that goes through kind of Boyrin's how he understands the gospel accounts. That's really informed a lot of my scholarship. But that book from Boyrin on Paul goes into really deep detail about how Paul would have imagined the spirit, the pneuma. Paul likely was informed from the philosophical and physical theories of the day, the physical sciences. So philosophical accounts and the account of physics seems to inform the way that Paul understands the Holy Spirit, or the Spirit of the Christ, as something that is all around you and is in you and envelops you and is made of this different spirit type stuff. And so thinking about, is it a corporeal body that is resurrected? Is it a resurrection of the spirit? And it seems like the gospel accounts may understand things a bit differently than the way that Paul understood things. The last point that I'll set up for you before just leaving you to happy reading for this week is to think some about the end times itself, the eschaton, or the study of the end times, eschatological. Gosh, I just tripped over all those words. But eschatology, the study of the end times, or the eschaton. So this is related to this sort of like apocalypse notion that the Messiah is associated with, is connected to. And one of the ways to solve for Jesus' return not happening is to say, oh, it turns out that the kingdom of God is already at hand. That end times process has already occurred. That's one of the ways that the gospel accounts respond to the sort of delayed second coming of Jesus, who they called the Christ. So you want to pay attention to that in this chapter as well. So there's 5 minutes, a little bit shorter than usual. I hope that sets you up for the reading here in chapter 3. Thank you to John, to Steve, to others who have been participating in the chat. Seriously, friends, it's single-digit numbers of us who are in this book reading group together. So do participate in the chats. You can go back to old chats if you want to. Don't be worried about what you say there, because those who are observing that chat in particular is just a few of us that are reading this together. So that gets you ready for chapter 3. I'll have another chat prompt on Wednesday. It's starting to get cold in Indiana where I live, so I'm starting to bundle up. I hope wherever you are living that you are safe and secure and warm and have food on the table. Thanks for reading with me. Let's get going chapter 3. We'll be back with you again soon. Peace out, friends.